teach a writing course, and so my primary goal was to teach students how to create free verse poetry. Within their writing, we focused on theme and imagery, how to create it, and how to develop it. Another main goal was for students to reach a more authentic audience than writing exclusively for me, the teacher. And that's where technology really came into play. This unit applies elements of each of the courses from COETAIL. The focus from Course 1 was on connectivism and getting students to put their work out there so it went beyond just myself as the audience. I wanted students to publish their poems online, share their digital poems publicly on YouTube, share their writing with each other for conferencing, and use their blogs to further share and reflect on their progress. From Course 2, students learned about digital citizenship, focusing on using Creative Commons materials and properly crediting their sources. From Course 3, visual literacy was hugely important, and the digital storytelling was the inspiration behind the digital poetry project. I wanted students to learn how to choose strong images that went beyond literal representations of their writing. Similarly, I wanted students to experience how digital storytelling enables whole new levels of experiencing a text. Lastly, technology integration was embedded throughout the entire unit. I wanted students to take what is traditionally a paper and pencil activity and transform it into a multimedia experience that was shared beyond the classroom. I targeted 2 of the ISTE standards. The first was creativity and innovation. Students were expected to apply existing knowledge to generate new ideas, products, or processes. They were also expected to create original works as a means of personal or group expression. For digital citizenship, students were expected to advocate and practice safe, legal, and responsible use of information and technology. The following Common Core standards were used for the writing component. Narrative writing, students were expected to use precise words and phrases, relevant descriptive details, and sensory language to capture the action and convey experiences and events. Students were to produce clear and coherent writing in which the development, organization, and style are appropriate to task, purpose, and audience. The backbone for the writing component of this project was, of course, Google Docs. Students used these for their drafting, conferencing, and commenting on other students' writing, and they used it for editing and revising their own poems. After practicing various skills and poetic elements in their writing, students used Explain Everything to show what they had attempted and to reflect on the effect of this in their poems.
I wanted to emphasize that, and then I added some repetition here, which matches up here. So for closure.
Students then researched online poetry publications and submitted one of their polished poems to a website of their choice. Nearly 3/4 of the student population was successful in having their work accepted and published online. They received authentic feedback ranging from comments to various forms of likes. Students were proud to see their work published and pleased with the encouraging feedback. The constructive criticism that some students received further enabled some valuable teachable moments. Students experimented with many of the skills that they would later use in their digital poems by creating posters for their theme poems. They used Comfite or Creative Commons to find an image that would reinforce and enhance their poem's theme or central image. They also had to cite their image, and most students used Flickr Attribution Helper to generate this attribution. Next, students manipulated their image in Word Photo. They used keywords from their poem that reinforced and developed its theme. Finally, students put everything together in a professional-looking poster using life cards. Students used their blogs to share their work, to reflect on the work, and also to get feedback from other students about their work. So here you can see the student has uploaded her Explain Everything video. They have shared their life cards about their theme poem, and they reflected upon the process and the product. And an overall reflection at the end of the poetry unit after we did all the writing and learned all the craft of poetry. And then here's the student's final digital poem and the reflection that goes along with that. I introduced the final digital poetry project by first reading and discussing Shane Koizen's performance poem, To This Day. We then listened to the audio component, which consisted of his reading the poem along with the soundtrack. Students then discussed how the audio really enhanced the mood of the poem and directed the reader's experience. Lastly, we watched the complete animated video of his poem, and students discussed the emotional impact that the visuals combined with his voice and the music had on the audience. After that, students got started by choosing their poems and gathering their images. For the images, students had many options. Some students chose to hand draw their images and photograph them. Others used their own personal photographs, and still others used programs like Alpaca and Google Draw to create their own images. However, the majority of the students chose to use online Creative Commons images. To actually create their videos, students likewise had many options. They could use any application they wanted so long as it could incorporate text, video, and audio. While most students went with iMovie, some students used Final Cut Pro, and one enterprising student used Powtoon.
A loud noise shook the sky, scaring both man and beast. The giant creature who was guarding her babies fell. The green, lush grass field, now a swamp of ruby red blood, an indicator that the knowledge is slowly disappearing. The angel, enjoying her first flight in the sky, now face first in the cold, mushy land. A signal warning of another test question dissolving into thin air. Why do creatures have to perish in hands of greedy men who are lazy, who are bullies, cowards, who pick on defenseless ones? If not killed, creatures are bound to metal poles, put in a cage that is now their future home. Creatures who are being used as a beauty screen, a coverage for their owner's ugliness. Creatures that are now no more important than a word nothing in the dictionary. Imagine children who will only see elephants on TV or illustrations with no knowledge of what one actually looks like. Is this the world you want to live in?
Did help for the poem to be read the way I wanted it to be read. Like if you just write it down, some people might not understand what you want to emphasize and what you don't want to emphasize. So if you read it yourselves, the audience will understand the way you want it to be read.
The unit clearly met the goals I had set out for it. Students gained an understanding of and appreciation for free verse poetry, and they began to see themselves as poets, which was the primary writing goal. Moreover, students used Creative Commons materials throughout the unit, transforming the written poems into multimedia creations that significantly enhanced targeted elements of their poems. They published their writing on poetry websites where they received authentic feedback, and they created digital stories that they shared publicly on their blogs and YouTube. Now that I have student examples, I would use those as mentor texts when introducing the project next time. I would also spend a bit more time in the earlier theme poem activity focusing more on the visual literacy component, namely what strong examples of images look like in terms of contrast, simplicity, and images that are figurative rather than literal representations. I do a few more formative activities to get them to think outside the box about their images. I would like to have more of a collaborative component also with this assignment in the future, though right now I'm not entirely sure what that would look like. Many components of this project were shared throughout the unit. The theme poem lifecard posters were displayed in the hallway during parent-teacher conferences, as well as during the Learning 2 conference that our school hosted this year, and I had a lot of positive feedback from my colleagues about their parents and about the quality of student writing. I also recently shared the outline for this assignment with a teacher in my department and gave her a tutorial on how to use the apps involved. I also made a display outside my room of students' poems that had been accepted and published online. This was photographed by my principal, who then posted it on her blog, which all of the teachers check at least once a week. Lastly, I have tweeted various components of this project to the SSIS Twitter account. And finally, the top 3 digital poems as voted by the grade 7 students will be presented at the end of semester middle school assembly. Students, administration, and teachers alike will see the end product of this unit. This unit reinforced what has repeatedly been emphasized throughout the COETAIL courses, and that is that as a teacher, you need to step back and let students take control of their learning. While I outlined the project, students had to make their own choices about which of their poems they wanted to use, what app was best for their purpose, what parts of their poem they really wanted to emphasize, and what music and images would best enhance their text. As it turned out, this was one of the things students most often commented that they enjoyed about the project. I was totally unfamiliar with several of the apps students use, such as Final Cut Pro, for example, yet that really wasn't a problem. Through YouTube tutorials and by utilizing student experts, students were able to access all the help they needed. Amongst the lessons I learned from doing this project, one was by far the most crucial. Book the iPad cart early. Seriously. I have no doubt that this unit achieved the redefinition level of the SAMR model. Without technology, students would have drafted in their writer's notebooks and handed in hard copies of their poems. I would have graded them, likely with a green or the dreaded red pen, and that would have been the end of it. Instead, students use Google Docs to revise, edit, and comment on each other's work, and they use technology to develop the themes and moods of their poetry. Furthermore, students publish their poems online, reaching an authentic, public, global audience. They also transform their poems into multimedia experiences that were again published to a worldwide audience. Simply put, this project was only possible because of the possibilities of technology.